And on to story number 2, viewers. India scripted history in golden letters. The nation's spacecraft Chandrayaan-3 landed on the south pole of the moon, a feat no other country has achieved. But this is just the beginning of a new space odyssey. India's first solar mission is set to cost about 378 crore rupees and is yet another symbol of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The project began in 2019 and is set to carry about 7 payloads to study specific aspects of the sun, including the dynamics of the sun's outer atmosphere. Let's tell you about the trajectory Aditya L1 will take. It will first be placed in a low Earth orbit, after which the spacecraft's orbit will be made more elliptical. Following this, onboard propulsion will be used to launch the spacecraft towards the L1 point. As it moves towards L1, the spacecraft will exit the Earth's gravitational sphere. It will then be placed in a large halo orbit around the L1 point. The spacecraft will take 4 months to reach its destination, and it's clear that India has now set steep ambitions and is at par with the superpowers of the world across pedestals. India continues with the mammoth task of acing the global space race.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 2 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And ahead of all that excitement of that particular launch, let's go across to our guest. Joining us is Dr Amitabha Ghosh, member of NASA Mars Rover Mission. Jijit Nadaburi Ravi, former scientist at ISRO, is also with us. Also joining us is Dr Vagish Mishra, assistant professor of the Indian Institute of Astrophysics from Bengaluru. Let me go across to Dr Amitabha Ghosh first. Dr Amitabha Ghosh, how do you see this mission? Of course, there's so much of buzz, there's so much of excitement in India and perhaps even parts of the world with India landing on the south pole of the moon. But with this particular Aditya mission, are we going to scale newer heights? Because the distance, of course, I understand is more, even though there are, of course, other countries that have launched solar missions in the past and perhaps even at a closer distance to the sun. But how significant is this when you look at India and its growing space program?
Well, it's a new capability. See, even for Chandrayaan-3 landing, what I stressed is it's not as much the mission and the specific landing, but it's a building of capability which is important. So here I would say this is another capability, maybe not as significant because India knows already how to launch, but it's certainly a new direction. And one of the things, I do see a lot of information about the mission, but perhaps from a planetary science perspective, why is the sun important? I think it's very important to realize that. I think the sun constitutes 99.8%, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of the mass of the solar system. So it's very important to study the sun from the planetary science perspective to see how it evolves and to find out how it was in the past. So it's a very it's a thing which touches us very close. And if you think of the entire universe, if you think that dark matter does not exist, exists in a lot of the mass exists in stars like this and in interstellar matter. So it's very important to understand solar evolution, and this is what all these missions, including Aditya and the Parker Solar Probe, which you mentioned, that it has gone much closer.
Right.
So it's a very fascinating avenue of inquiry.
Very important point. And of course, the sun is so essential and integral to our lives here on planet Earth. And it's not just about, our daily lives, but there's so many technological aspects of it. One of the aspects, Jijit Nadaburi Ravi, is the fact that, several of our satellites do get impacted with solar activity, including solar flares, etc. How will this mission actually help us from preventing, curbing, or in any way controlling that impact?
Yes. So one of the important factor that Aditya L1 will be focusing on is study of the solar winds. And solar winds is a primary factor that determines the weather in the solar system. When I say weather in solar system, it also involves all the spacecraft which is traveling through the solar system, like Earth moon bound or Mars bound, or even orbiting the moons and planets. They are all affected by the solar winds. Even Chandrayaan-1, there was a case where there is a suspicion that the solar wind has caused some kind of heating inside the spacecraft, even because of some other DC-DC converter. Also, there is another alternate theory. But one of the theories is the solar wind has caused some kind of impact on the Chandrayaan-1, reduced its lifespan from 2 years to 10 months. So it's very important for all of us to study the solar wind and provide some kind of predictive mechanism so that all of our spacecrafts flying around the solar system is safe. That is the immediate kind of value addition that is generated from this kind of mission. and of course, so many others. It is a kind of a beginning of our exploration, interplanetary and exploration, and maybe a baby steps towards the kind of habitation of the entire solar system, like we are.
Okay, it's a big step. It's a big step in that direction. But Dr. Vagish Mishra is assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics, which has in fact contributed to the payloads on board Aditya. Dr. Vagish Mishra, if you were to explain in very simple terms to our viewers, what are these experiments and what are they really going to tell us in terms of data? How will it differentiate or change the life of the common Indian, the common man?
Yeah, so thank you. So actually, I belong from this Indian Institute of Astrophysics, and this institute has contributed to the one prime payload on this Aditya L1. There are 7 payloads. So the one which is contributed from IIA Bengaluru is the Visible Emission Line Coronagraph, VELC. So this coronagraph, in very simple terms, will try to observe the dynamic explosions happening in the outermost atmosphere of the sun, called coronal mass ejections. And these coronal mass ejections are very important because when it happens on the sun, billions of tons of plasma already actually expelled from the sun into the heliosphere, away from the sun towards the planet.
Right.
And these huge expulsions of plasma can reach to any planet. Most of the time when it reaches to Earth, it causes weather in space weather. There is a new branch, and they try to understand how weather in space is changing, affecting satellites in the space.
Right.
Unlikely to the terrestrial weather, which we humans care about.
Well, since we have already so many spacecraft, definitely very important from that perspective. I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us this evening, Dr. Vagish Mishra, Jijit Nadaburi Ravi, as well as Dr. Amitabha Ghosh. All eyes at 11 o'clock tomorrow when that takeoff is expected. And of course, the period will be in months. It'll be about 4 months, we understand, before it reaches that L1 spot. All eyes on that particular journey as well. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.